gently in his.
We're together now, we're not going to fight, and we can go out and discover what the world has to offer for ourselves.
Our throat being unnecessarily cleared from somewhere behind us caused me to giggle. Diego, we are totally alone. Fred defected also and asked if we would like to join his coven. Diego's bright ruby eyes widened and became thoughtful.
Oh, sounds good to me. Safety in numbers, right? We needs to stop by the Cullens' house first though, let them know what our plans are so they don't worry. They seem like the type to worry.
How do we know we can trust these Cullens?
Asked Fred incredulously. Diego blinked in amazement several times before shrugging his shoulders and answering.
They disproved several theories that we knew otherwise, like burning in the sun, holy water, garlic, turning into bats, all lies. Moreover, they didn't kill me on sight. It's just a feeling I have, we can trust them.
I nodded apprehensively at the thought of entering the enemy's home, which was a little frightening. Apparently, they weren't the enemy. They never were. It had all been a lie. This Victoria only thought of us as her measly little puppets to exact revenge against those that were only defending themselves. Diego tugged on my hand, pulling me from my thoughts and leading me into the forest. Fred trailed behind us silently. We veered away from the rest of the bloodthirsty pack, heading off in a slightly southwest direction. I relished in the hold Diego had on my hand. It was warm, strong, and caring, and I loved every second that my hand was in his. We broke through the forest in the thick overhead canopy, into an open field with a large white house on the other side of the small stream that ran through the center of the field. It looked like a house out of one of my period novels. Maybe it was from the early 1900s. Diego continued to lead us towards the house. Not once did he release my hand, even when we had to jump over the stream. He then guided us over to the back porch where he sat down and pulled me down to the step next to him. Fred leaned up against the railing and waited. We waited for quite a while. The sky was starting to darken overhead when finally there was sound was ruffling branches to the north.
God, those military guys give me the creeps.
Echoed a voice without the belch into it. My head shot up to see 8 figures emerging from the woods. 7 had bright yellow eyes and 1 had rich brown ones. Only one of the 8 had a heartbeat. Upon hearing the moist pumping of a nearby heartbeat, we all tensed and personally, venom floated my mouth.
Whoa, the little man is here.
Shouted a rather large, dark-haired vampire. I glanced at him then back to Diego. I arched an eyebrow while his head dropped down and shook from side to side. I glanced back up to see the big bear of man approach us. I tensed as he drew closer and closer to us, a smile on his face but his size was intimidating. He walked right up to Diego and patted him on the back.
Hey Diego, glad to see you're back, and you brought a couple friends.
Diego flashed to his feet but kept my hand firmly in his.
This is Bree, the girl I told you about.
He smiled and nodded at me then nodded his head toward another companion.
That's Fred. We've sort of made a covenant we're going to head out on our own.
I let Diego and Fred talk amongst themselves with the big guy and I surveyed the coven now surrounding us. There was a tiny girl with black hair bouncing up and down on the balls of her feet and next to her was a guy with blonde hair who was covered with scars. There was also a kindly-looking woman with auburn hair and she watched us with a huge smile on her face. Beside her was another blonde man about an inch shorter than the first and he looked like he should be heading to church. Close to them was a leggy female with long blonde hair and she had her arms crossed over her chest and was glaring at the vampire version of the Hulk. Lastly, was a tall, gangly guy with reddish hair that stared at all of us intently just watching. His arms were wrapped around the human tightly and possessively. The human was a frail-looking girl that looked like she would trip over her own feet and she was hugging the vampire's arms even more securely to her. Victoria wanted us to kill this little human for her. She didn't look like she would put up much of a fight but of course, she has a whole coven to protect her. Why in the world would they put their lives on the line for a puny human girl?
because she's my mate and vampires mate for life.
The gangly one growled and his words were terse, causing me to flinch slightly, and I clung tighter to Diego. So, this was the mind reader I was told about. He nodded in reply to my unspoken question. I bit the inside of my cheek, pondering over the questions I wanted to ask him and where to start. Is it true that Victoria's mate tried to kill this human so you killed him instead? Is it also true that she created us to do her dirty work? He sighed somewhat forlornly.
Yes, on both accounts, but we got her in the end. She left all of you to the majority of us while Bella and I were in hiding. Riley and Victoria showed up and I ended them.
I felt my eyes widen as I stared at him in shock. He took out Riley on our creator. Impressive. He bowed his head slightly, acknowledging my praise. I glanced over to see Diego and Fred were now talking to the other 3 males from the other coven. Both Diego and Fred wore huge smiles. Did I miss something? Diego. I whispered into his shoulder quietly. He turned and looked at me, then grabbed me around the shoulders and pulled me to him.
They've been telling us about another way of life. If we are willing to take it, we can live off animal blood, which is why their eyes are golden. They suggest we leave the area for several years, so we can avoid anyone that might recognize us. They also have family in Alaska we can visit as well if we are seriously interested in learning the alternative lifestyle. They consider us a friend now, or at least, not a threat, which is a good thing in a world that's so new to us.
The words he shut out stupefied me. Was there really another way to live? I didn't have to kill people just to survive. I'll have to think about it, maybe do some talking to see what you two think. Diego nodded happily and his embrace tightened.
I agree, we'll have to think about it. Moreover, they are right about leaving the area. I was thinking about heading north, maybe east to Montana. Now that we know the sun won't torch us, I want to spend as much time in the warming rays as possible.
He wiggled his eyebrows at me, causing me to gaze at him inquisitively. What was that wiggle all about? The blonde-haired, scared one and the mind reader groaned in unison and rolled their eyes. I looked at them quizzically, but neither would tell me. They just turned their face away from me and played innocent.
How about we head up now?
Fred asked casually with a small smile. Diego and I nodded happily. I was personally excited to go start our lives anew. No longer having to worry that one of my coven members would kill me because they felt like it. Not having to follow the orders of those who lied to us about nearly everything, or suspecting the worst in everybody. I was finally free to make my own decisions, do things I want to do, such as who I want to like. I wonder if Diego was having feelings for me as well, and how strong were they? Yes, let's. With wide smiles and free souls we said our goodbyes and promised to visit soon, probably for the wedding. We slowly walked away, heading north into the thick forest. I walked ahead of Diego and Fred, enjoying the sparse rays of sun as it broke through the canopy, casting diamonds to dance around on the leaves. I felt euphoric. Diego was able to save Fred and me from a fate that would have led to our deaths because the Cullen saved him from the same imminent fate. Now, the 3 of us were on our own, heading into the unknown to discover what the world had in store for us, and we were doing it together. I spun around and walked backwards, smiling at my 2 companions. They smiled back happily. We were a coven, no, a family that rose from the ashes of Victoria's evil scheme. We dared to challenge the ones in power and came out on top, for the 2 main problems were now dead. We asked ourselves, do we dare? And we did. Now we are free to live our own lives.